Tonight I'll be reviewing Labyrinth, starring David Bowie and Real G. Good evening. It's a fairly sure sign that Christmas is lurking round the corner when the big, elaborate family films come whooping out wearing paper hats and asking you to pull a cracker. And such a film, in intent anyway, is Labyrinth, a fairy tale created by Jim Henson, the man who makes the Muppets, written by Terry Jones, once of the Monty Python team, and starring David Bowie. It all sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And I wish I could say it was, but alas, honesty demands that instead of emulating Santa Claus, I have to go about in the guise of Scrooge muttering humbug. The story is as follows. Teenager Jennifer Connelly, much to her resentment, is left babysitting for her infant half-brother, and finding his wailing and puling less than intellectually stimulating, fervently wishes the goblins would take him. Never reluctant to oblige, the goblins promptly do so, greatly to the rapidly repentant Miss Connelly's dismay. Whereupon, enter the Goblin King, David Bowie, to explain that if she wants the kid back, she has 13 hours to find her way through a mysterious labyrinth and into the Goblin Castle.
You're him, aren't you? You're the Goblin King. I want my brother back, please, if it's all the same.
What's said is said.
But I didn't mean it.
Oh, you didn't?
Please, where is he?
You know very well where he is.
Please bring him back, please.
Sarah, go back to your room. Play with your toys and your costumes. Forget about the baby.
I can't.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. Nothing more. But if you turn it this way, look into it, it'll show you your dreams. But this is not a gift for an ordinary girl who takes care of a screaming baby. Do you want it? Then forget the baby.
I can't. It is that I don't appreciate what you're trying to do for me, but I want my brother back. He must be so scared.
Sarah. Don't defy me. You're no match for me, Sarah.
Well, Miss Connelly embarks upon her journey, picking up on the way such companions as Hoggle, a gardening dwarf who occupies himself by killing fairies with an insecticide spray, Ludo, a sort of hairy and lugubrious relative of Chewbacca of Star Wars fame, and Sir Didymus, a kind of fox terrier at arms. Now, given all this and the fact that, fleetingly, the story is reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz, it still sounds pretty good. So why isn't it? Well, mostly because, except at odd moments, there's no sense of danger or dread, and here perhaps the casting of David Bowie is at fault. He's not remotely menacing, possibly because he looks androgynous enough to be crowned either King of the Goblins or Queen of the May, depending on where the vacancy lies. In his favour, though, I must admit that he refrains from singing too much, and I say this not because I have any aversion to Mr. Bowie singing, but because in this kind of film, the action stops every time the leading character clears his throat and delivers himself of a few well-chosen verses. And under Jim Henson's direction, Labyrinth is too slow already to allow for any built-in stoppages. On the credit side, Mr. Henson's goblins and other assorted creatures, though suffering overmuch from a touch of the cutes, are admirably done. Miss Connelly, too, is perfectly acceptable, despite the fact that, like most American teenagers, she seems too worldly and experienced to have much belief in fairies and goblins, unless they came at her with a chainsaw on Halloween.
I smell trouble. Come on, Nina. Oh, no! What is that?
Watch out! Hoggle!
to say that I was a bit worried about the well-being of the baby, Toby Froud by name. On the general question of whether or not I like babies, I tend to go along with those who say it depends how they're cooked, but at times this one looked genuinely distressed, and since I don't believe that babies are able to act distressed, I have to assume that it probably was. Otherwise it seemed a decent sort of baby and would probably roast up a treat for Sunday lunch. As for the film, well, it is rather a disappointment, and that's a pity. It was obviously made with great care, but somewhere in the execution something went amiss. One word of warning, there's just the occasional scene that might prove frightening for very small children, though who am I to say? In my experience, small children are about as easily scared as Al Capone.